There are more corporations registered in Delaware than there are human beings living in it. Over 1.5 million businesses, including more than 60% of the Fortune 500, are legally domiciled in a state with fewer than 1 million residents. Delaware collects over $2 billion every year in franchise taxes alone, money paid by companies that have no employees, no offices, and no operations anywhere near the state. It is the single most efficient wealth extraction machine in American governance. But Delaware was not always a corporate tax shelter. It was something far more tangible. It was a gunpowder factory. And the family that built that factory proceeded to build the entire state around it, from the chemical plants to the highways to the courtrooms. For over 2 centuries, one surname has been woven into the fabric of Delaware so deeply that separating the family from the state is functionally impossible. Today, we count down the families that own Delaware, starting from the margins and working inward toward the dynasty at its core. Number 8. The Gore family, the invisible fabric of modern life. In 1958, Wilbert Bill Gore and his wife Genevieve left a comfortable career at DuPont and started a company in the basement of their home in Newark, Delaware. Bill Gore had been working with a polymer called polytetrafluoroethylene, better known as PTFE or Teflon, and he believed the material had applications that DuPont was ignoring. He was right. Their son, Robert Gore, discovered in 1969 that if you stretched PTFE rapidly under specific conditions, it formed a microporous structure that was waterproof yet breathable. That discovery became Gore-Tex, and it changed the outdoor, medical, and aerospace industries permanently. W.L. Gore and Associates remains one of the largest privately held companies in the United States, generating an estimated $4.5 billion in annual revenue. The Gore family has never taken the company public. They have never sold a minority stake. They have never accepted outside investors. The company operates under a lattice management structure with no traditional hierarchy, no job titles, and no corporate bureaucracy. This radical organizational model has produced one of the most innovative companies in American history while keeping the Gore family's wealth entirely shielded from public scrutiny. Gore-Tex is merely the most famous product in the Gore portfolio. The company manufactures cables for spacecraft, vascular grafts used in heart surgery, guitar strings, dental floss, and filtration membranes used in pharmaceutical manufacturing. Bill and Genevieve Gore built a company whose products literally operate inside your body, above the atmosphere, and on concert stages worldwide. Their estimated family net worth exceeds $3 billion, but the true value of the private company is almost certainly far higher. The general public knows Gore-Tex as a jacket material. They have no idea that the same company makes components for the International Space Station and implants sitting inside the chests of cardiac patients. The Gore family built the most diversified advanced materials company in Delaware by walking out of DuPont's front door and building something better in their basement. They are the only family in the state that ever challenged the DuPont monopoly on industrial chemistry, and they did it without ever going public, without ever advertising, and without ever compromising their independence. Number 7. John Jakob Raskob, the man who built the Empire State. John Jakob Raskob was born in 1879 in Lockport, New York, to a modest family. He secured a job as a personal secretary to Pierre DuPont, and rapidly proved himself to be one of the most gifted financial minds in American corporate history. Raskob rose from secretary to treasurer of the DuPont Company and then to the chief financial officer of General Motors, which DuPont had acquired a controlling interest in. He engineered the installment payment plan for automobiles, the innovation that allowed middle-class Americans to purchase cars on credit for the first time. Raskob's financial genius extended beyond corporate strategy. He invested his DuPont and GM earnings into what became one of the most iconic real estate projects in human history, the Empire State Building. Raskob was the driving force behind its construction, completed in 1931 in just 410 days. He turned a $41 million investment into the tallest building on Earth and one of the most recognizable structures in global culture. Raskob simultaneously pursued political power. As a devout Catholic, he served as chairman of the Democratic National Committee and managed Al Smith's 1928 presidential campaign, the first time a Catholic ran for president on a major party ticket. From his base in Wilmington, Delaware, Raskob operated at the intersection of industrial wealth, real estate ambition, and national politics, a combination that made him one of the most influential Americans of the early 20th century. History remembers the Empire State Building, but has forgotten the man who financed it. Raskob demonstrated a pattern that would repeat throughout Delaware's history. The state produces figures of extraordinary national influence who operate almost entirely below public awareness. He started as a secretary in Wilmington and ended as the builder of the world's tallest skyscraper and the financial architect of the American automobile industry. His story is Delaware's story, immense power exercised from a place nobody is watching. Number 6. The Biden family. The political machine. The Biden family is not wealthy by the standards of the other dynasties on this list. But in Delaware, political power often exceeds financial power, and the Bidens have held a near-continuous grip on the state's political machinery for over half a century. Joseph R. Biden Sr. established the family in Wilmington after moving from Scranton, Pennsylvania. His son, Joe Biden, was elected to the United States Senate from Delaware in 1972 at the age of 29, one of the youngest senators in American history. He held that seat for 36 years before becoming vice president and then the 46th president of the United States. The Biden family's power in Delaware is not built on personal wealth. It is built on institutional relationships. Over 5 decades, the Biden network cultivated deep connections with Delaware's banking industry, its legal establishment, and its corporate community. In a state with fewer than 1 million people, personal relationships substitute for the institutional bureaucracy found in larger states. Knowing everyone is more valuable than owning anything. Delaware's political landscape is unusually intimate. The entire state has only 3 counties. The state legislature is small. The legal community in Wilmington is tight-knit. In this environment, a family that holds a Senate seat for 36 years accumulates influence that compounds like interest. The Biden name in Delaware functions less like a political brand and more like a utility. Always present, always connected, always on. The national media frames the Biden family as a political story. In Delaware, they are an infrastructure story. The family's influence is embedded in every level of state governance, legal practice, and institutional decision-making. They did not buy Delaware, they networked it. And in a state this small, networking is ownership by another name. Number 5. The State of Delaware Incorporated, the government that runs like a business. This entry is not a family, it is the state itself, and understanding why Delaware functions as one of the most profitable governing entities in America is essential to understanding who truly owns it. In 1899, Delaware passed its General Corporation Law, one of the most permissive incorporation statutes in the United States. The law allowed companies to register in Delaware regardless of where they actually operated. Over the following century, Delaware refined this law repeatedly, creating a legal environment so favorable to corporations that it became the default jurisdiction for American business. Today, more than 1.5 million entities are incorporated in the state, including over 60% of the Fortune 500. Delaware collects over $2 billion per year in franchise taxes from these registrations. This revenue, paid by companies that may have no physical presence in the state, accounts for roughly a quarter of Delaware's total state revenue. The state has no sales tax. It has relatively low property taxes. The franchise tax revenue from corporate registrations effectively subsidizes the cost of living for every Delaware resident. But the true asset is not the registration fee. It is the Court of Chancery, a specialized business court established in 1792 that handles corporate disputes without juries. Chancery court judges are experts in corporate law, and their decisions have created a body of legal precedent so comprehensive that corporate attorneys across the country regard Delaware law as the gold standard. Companies incorporate in Delaware because they know that any future disputes will be resolved by judges who understand business, not by unpredictable juries. Delaware did not become America's corporate capital by accident. It was engineered, and the family most responsible for shaping the legal and political environment that made it possible is the same family that built the state's first major industry. Number 4. Robert H. Richards IV, the heir who escaped justice. In 2009, Robert H. Richards IV, a great-great-grandson of Irénée DuPont and an heir to the DuPont family fortune, pleaded guilty to fourth-degree rape of his 3-year-old daughter. The crime carried a potential sentence of up to 15 years in state prison. Judge Jan Jordan sentenced Richards to 8 years of probation and 0 prison time. In her ruling, the judge stated that Richards would not fare well in prison. The case was not widely reported at the time. It only became national news in 2014 when Richards' ex-wife filed a lawsuit alleging that he had also sexually abused his infant son. The case exposed a fundamental tension at the heart of Delaware's power structure. The DuPont family had shaped the state's legal system, funded its institutions, and employed its residents for 2 centuries. When a member of that family committed one of the most serious crimes possible, the system they had built responded by protecting its own. Richards' case is not an isolated incident in the broader DuPont saga. It is a data point in a pattern: extreme wealth, institutional deference, and a state so small and so intertwined with a single family that objective justice becomes structurally difficult. The judge's statement that a DuPont heir would not fare well in prison was not a legal argument. It was an admission that the normal rules do not apply when the defendant's surname is on the buildings. Number 3. John Eleuthère DuPont, the Foxcatcher. John DuPont was born in 1938 into one of the wealthiest branches of the DuPont family. He inherited Foxcatcher Farm, a vast estate in Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, on the western border of the DuPont sphere of influence. He was an ornithologist, a philatelist, a competitive pentathlete, and one of the largest private sponsors of amateur wrestling in the United States. DuPont built a state-of-the-art wrestling training facility on the Foxcatcher estate and recruited Olympic and world-class wrestlers to train there, including gold medalist Dave Schultz. For years, DuPont bankrolled the American wrestling program, funding athletes' living expenses, training facilities, and international competition travel. On January 26, 1996, John DuPont drove to the edge of his estate, found Dave Schultz working on his car in the driveway, and shot him 3 times. Schultz died at the scene. DuPont then retreated into his mansion and engaged in a 2-day standoff with police before surrendering. He was convicted of third-degree murder in 1997 and sentenced to 13 to 30 years in prison. He died in prison on December 9, 2010, at the age of 72. The case was dramatized in the 2014 film Foxcatcher, starring Steve Carell as DuPont. The Foxcatcher case revealed what happens when unlimited wealth meets untreated mental illness. DuPont had exhibited increasingly erratic and paranoid behavior for years. Witnesses described him believing his estate was filled with ghosts and that unnamed enemies were tunneling beneath his property. His wealth insulated him from intervention. Nobody tells a billionaire he needs help. The DuPont fortune provided everything except the accountability that might have saved Dave Schultz's life. Number 2. Pierre Samuel DuPont, the builder. Pierre S. DuPont was born in 1870, the great-grandson of the company's founder. He took control of the family firm in 1902 alongside his cousins Alfred Versailles and Coleman DuPont, purchasing the company from older family members who were preparing to sell it to outside interests. Pierre reorganized DuPont into one of the most efficiently managed corporations in the world, implementing cost accounting, return on investment analysis, and decentralized management structures that became the template for modern corporate governance. Pierre's financial acumen extended far beyond chemicals. He orchestrated DuPont's massive investment in General Motors, acquiring approximately 23% of GM's stock and effectively taking control of the automaker during its critical growth phase in the 1920s. Pierre served as president of General Motors from 1920 to 1923. Stabilizing the company during a financial crisis and installing the management framework that would make GM the largest corporation on Earth for most of the 20th century. Pierre's most enduring legacy is not corporate. It is his transformation of the former Pierce family arboretum near Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, into Longwood Gardens, one of the premier horticultural display gardens in the world. He invested millions into fountains, conservatories, and landscaped grounds that now attract over 1.5 million visitors annually. He also personally funded a complete overhaul of Delaware's public school system, building 89 schools for black students in the state during the era of segregation, an act of philanthropy that was revolutionary for its time. Pierre S. DuPont is the most consequential member of the family that most people have never heard of. He saved DuPont from being sold to outsiders, saved General Motors from collapse, built one of the most beautiful public gardens in the world, and funded schools for the children that his society had systematically excluded from education. He operated with the conviction that wealth carried an obligation to build permanent institutions, not just extract profit. In a family defined by both brilliance and darkness, Pierre represents the best argument for what dynastic power can accomplish when directed towards something beyond self-interest. Number 1. The DuPont Dynasty, the family that built a state. On January 1st, 1800, a French chemist named Eleuthère DuPont arrived in the United States as a refugee from the French Revolution. 2 years later, on the banks of the Brandywine Creek near Wilmington, Delaware, he established a gunpowder mill. He had studied under Antoine Lavoisier, the father of modern chemistry, and he recognized that American gunpowder was vastly inferior to European quality. He set out to manufacture a superior product. Within a decade, DuPont de Nemours and Company was the largest gunpowder manufacturer in the United States. During the War of 1812, the company supplied the majority of the American military's ammunition. During the Civil War, DuPont supplied an estimated 40% of all gunpowder used by the Union Army. The family had positioned itself as an indispensable supplier to the federal government during every major conflict in American history. By the early 20th century, the company pivoted from explosives to industrial chemistry, developing or commercializing nylon, Teflon, Kevlar, Lycra, and dozens of other synthetic materials that defined modern consumer life. DuPont's research laboratories were among the most productive in corporate history, generating inventions that appear in virtually every home, vehicle, and workplace on the planet. But the DuPont story is not merely a corporate history. It is the story of a family that became inseparable from the state it inhabited. At their peak, the DuPonts employed a significant fraction of Delaware's workforce. They built the roads. They funded the schools. They endowed the museums. The Nemours Estate, Winterthur Museum, and Hagley Museum are all DuPont family properties open to the public. The Wilmington skyline exists in its current form because the DuPonts decided it should. The family itself is staggering in scale. An estimated 3,500 living descendants carry the DuPont name or direct bloodline. For generations, the family practiced strategic intermarriage between branches to keep the fortune consolidated. First cousin marriages were common through the 19th century. The family maintained separate estates along the Brandywine Valley, creating what historians have described as a self-contained aristocratic enclave unlike anything else in American history. In 2017, DuPont merged with Dow Chemical in a $130 billion deal, the largest chemical industry merger in history. The combined entity was subsequently split into 3 independent companies: DuPont de Nemours, Dow Inc., and Corteva Agriscience. The family's direct operational control over the company they founded has diminished, but their economic and cultural grip on Delaware remains. The DuPont family's combined wealth is conservatively estimated at $14.8 billion, spread across dozens of family branches and hundreds of trusts. But the dollar figure dramatically understates their true power. They did not merely get rich in Delaware, they constructed Delaware. The state's legal infrastructure, its corporate registration system, its educational institutions, its cultural landmarks, and its political networks all bear the fingerprints of a single family that has been engineering its environment for over 2 centuries. Other states have wealthy families. Delaware has an owner. Delaware is the smallest state with the largest shadow. It is the legal home of more corporations than any other jurisdiction on Earth, and it was built, from the gunpowder mills to the courtrooms, by a single dynasty that has operated for over 220 years. From the Gore family who challenged DuPont's monopoly from their basement, to the Biden family who built a political machine in DuPont's shadow, to the heirs who committed unspeakable acts and received unspeakable leniency, Delaware is a case study in what happens when one family and one state become the same entity. Which aspect of Delaware's power surprises you most? The corporate registration machine or the family that built it? Tell us below. Subscribe to Global Status. We follow the money into the places it was never meant to be seen.